Welcome back to our study on the book of Romans. This is Sonship Establishment, and this is session number 60. And we've been having a big discussion at the break, and we probably just should have filmed that whole break. But the question that Norm is asking right here at the start is, what about praying for guidance? Praying for guidance, I'm going to turn that a little bit, Norm, and say that's what people say. I'm praying for wisdom to know what to do. Wisdom is not, just like guidance, is not really a prayer issue, it's an education issue. In other words, the answer to that prayer is not, God, I need you to somehow tell me what to do without me knowing how or why you came to that conclusion. He won't do that. What He will do is give you a sonship education that will equip you to make those decisions, because His wisdom is now in you. And so the prayer needs to be tweaked a little bit to say, I need the education. I need this education to work in me. Because by this education, I will be guided. By this education, I will have wisdom. By this education. Because He's not going to do it any other way. Because once you begin to get off into that, then you begin to look for, okay, God, give me a sign. Am I going the right way or not? And then you get off into that kind of stuff. And then that's completely off course. So, and I know someone's going to run over to the book of James and go, if any man lack wisdom, let him ask of God, who giveth to all men liberally and upbraideth not. But you're talking about the believing remnant over in the day of wrath, when they're going to have wisdom on the spot because they didn't have their lifetime to get educated. The whole thing goes south for them in the middle of the tribulation. You got 3.5 years before it's all over. How would you like to think your whole sonship education had 42 months? I mean, that would, well, guess what? We're already gone. That'd be the end. Have we been in this 3.5 years in the book of Romans? Probably not quite 3.5. 2.5. Anyways, that makes sense. Really, the thing I would say, I don't want to tell you what to pray for and what not to pray for, because then that just gives you more anxiety. But to really just answer your question, I would not say, oh God, I need some wisdom about this. I know that the education is going to give me that wisdom. So in the meantime, I'm going to make the best decision I can, because as a son, I have liberty to make those choices, right? And you're going to get some wrong. And if you get it wrong, you know what you'll do? You'll look at that and go, oh, well, that wasn't the right one. So you know what you'll do? You'll churn, you'll go, hey, Bob, we got to do this, because that didn't work. And you'll learn from that. But later, the education will give you wisdom where before you just trial and error those decisions, you'll know what your Father would do, but more importantly, you'll know why He would choose that.
I think I was just a bit more hoping He would intercede between me and the devil.
Yeah, right. Right. Well, believe me, there's not anything happening to you that's going to be happening above the level of where you are. So you can find comfort in that. Satan has no individual plans for anybody in this assembly right now. The only things that are happening to us are the stuff that's just generally happening as part of the course of this world and the policy of evil that's just at work for the whole world. But it doesn't spotlight me or you or anybody like that. It's the same across the board for everybody. It's kind of like heat in West Texas. We're all under it, So I can't go out in the yard and say to Billy, why does God hate me so much? It's so hot in my yard. Well, it's just as hot in my neighbor's yard, So the general policy of evil is at work. But He's not going to allow Satan to do something that's going to, to target you specifically, to try to get you to, throw in the towel or be destroyed or any of that kind of business. He's not allowing that. Does that help you at all? thanks for asking that. I know there are other people that are asking that, and Norma's usually pretty quiet, so this is interactive learning. And, okay. Searching of the heart. So let's put ourselves kind of back on track here with that. Let me show you the first time. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take you over to 1 Chronicles. And when you're in 1st and 2nd Chronicles and 1st and 2nd Kings, who are the people that are at center stage in those 4 books? David and Solomon. And what do you know about David and Solomon? Father, son. It's through them that Israel's sonship curriculum was laid out. That whole table of contents. Remember, we looked at all of that. You know that God suspended the judgments that He prescribed in Leviticus 26. He gave them that extension of mercy in which He rolled back those judgments, and Israel had a time of prosperity. And what else did He do? He gave the Davidic covenant, those 5 mandates of the Davidic covenant. So now that we're talking about David and Solomon, look back, 1 Chronicles 28, and here it is in verse 1. And David assembled all the princes of Israel, the princes of the tribes, and the captains of the companies that ministered to the king by course, and the captains over the thousands, and the captains over the hundreds, and the stewards over all the substance and possession of the king and of his sons, with the officers and with the mighty men, and with all the valiant men, unto Jerusalem. So he had them all come to Jerusalem. Verse 2. Then David the king stood up upon his feet and said, Hear me, my brethren and my people. As for me, I had in mine heart to build a house of rest for the ark of the covenant of the Lord, and for the footstool of our God, and had made ready for the building. But God said unto me, Thou shalt not build a house for my name, because thou hast been a man of war, and hast shed blood. Now, I'm highlighting that part about being a man of war, because the name Solomon means peaceable. David was a man of war. Solomon was a man of peace. By the way, both of those describe the Lord Jesus Christ. When He comes back at the Advent, He's a man of war. When He sets up His kingdom, He's the Prince of Peace. You're going to see both of those in Him. But that's just as an aside. Let's keep reading. Verse 4. Howbeit the Lord God of Israel chose me before all the house of my father to be king over Israel forever. And believe me, when He raises up David and puts him as king over Israel, he will literally be king forever. And that's what's going to happen in the kingdom. And David will sit on that throne and be king over Israel. You say, I thought Jesus was going to sit on the throne. Jesus is not just king of Israel, He's the King of Kings. So David will be king over Israel. The 12, remember, will sit on thrones ruling the 12 tribes. David will be over them. And Jesus will be over all of them. Okay. By the way, you do understand, he's wanting to build the house of God. He's wanting to build the temple, and God's telling him no. That's what's going on. Okay. And all of my sons, and all of my sons, for the Lord hath given me many sons, He hath chosen Solomon my son to sit upon the throne of the kingdom of the Lord over Israel. And he said unto me, Solomon thy son, he shall build my house and my courts, for I have chosen him to be my son, and I will be his father. Now that is very particular terminology, is it not? It is. He didn't say, I'll be like a father and he'll be like a son. He said, I have chosen him to be my son. Wow. I mean, that's instructive in just the way that is put together. Now, let's go to verse 7, which is the next verse. Moreover, I will establish his kingdom forever, if he be constant to do my commandments and my judgments as at this day. Now, therefore, in the sight of all Israel, the congregation of the Lord, and in the audience of our God, keep and seek for all the commandments of the Lord your God, that you may possess this good land, and leave it for an inheritance to your children after you forever. And thou, Solomon, my son, know thou the God of thy father. Now this is David talking to him. Solomon, my son, know thou the God of thy father. In other words, know my God. And serve him with a perfect heart and with a willing mind, for the Lord searcheth all hearts. This is the first mention of this particular phraseology. and understandeth all the imaginations of the thoughts. If thou seek him, he'll be found of thee, but if thou forsake him, he will cast thee off forever. Now, I'm just showing you that to show you the first mention of that particular phrase. But now I want to show you that when it comes to the searching of the heart, God has two ways to do that. He does that one way with his adopted sons and daughters, but he does it a different way with the rest of the world. Remember we talked about the omniscience thing? And that would be the different way in which he does it. Let me show you how God does the searching of the heart for wicked men. That'll be in Jeremiah 17. The heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. Who can know it? I, the Lord, search the heart. I try the reins, even to give every man according to his ways and according to the fruit of his doings. Now, if we were to go back and read this whole passage, you would see he's actually talking about wicked men, and he says, you know what? I search their heart too. Are they asking him to search their heart? No. God says, not asking your permission. I know what's in your heart. I know what you're trying to do. I know what's behind it. You know what's really going on here? They can fool other men because men can't know a man's heart. But God says, you can't fool me. I search all the hearts. And he does. And so that is by his omniscience. That is by his omnipotence. But when you're talking about what's happening in Romans chapter 8, you're talking about a different kind of searching of the heart. Now, I don't know if you remember, but if you go back to Romans 8, 26 and 27, he talks about the Spirit interceding for us, right? And then, in fact, let me just back up. Because I know let me see what's the next verse. No, look at this. Let me just back up to this verse. Oh, man, I'm going to have to go way back. There. And he that searcheth the hearts knoweth what is the mind of the Spirit, because he maketh intercession for the saints according to the will of God. If God is just standing with him going, searching your heart, he doesn't need the Spirit to intercede. He already knows, doesn't he? Do you see? In other words, God's saying, I'm not going to just look straight into your heart. But because you don't know what to say, because you don't know how to pray about these things as you ought, I'm going to have the Spirit make intercession for you according to the will of God. And he says, and then I'm going to know what's in the mind of the Spirit. See, the fact that the Spirit is involved shows you God's not just automatically doing this. Because if he was, he wouldn't need the Spirit to do that. Right? So you see, there really is a vital difference here between what's going on. So let me get back over to where we were. Was it right before that? Oh, okay, right there. Okay. Because if he did that, Romans 8, 26, 27 wouldn't make any sense whatsoever. Why even say those things if God is just looking down, probing into your heart, and doing it by his omniscience? I mean, those two verses would be worthless. They wouldn't mean a thing, and they'd really be just totally disjuncted from what was going on. So, Jeremiah 31. Now, you know this is going to be the new covenant. We talked about this during orientation. Behold, the days come, saith the Lord, that I'll make a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah, not according to the covenant I made with their fathers in the day I took them by the hand to bring them out of the land of Egypt, which my covenant they break, although I was a husband unto them, saith the Lord. But this shall be the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel after those days, saith the Lord. I'll put my law in their inward parts and write it in their hearts and be their God, and they shall be my people. Don't get thrown off by that law. I'll write my law in their inward parts. He's not talking about the law of Moses. You know what he's talking about? He's talking about the commandments of a father to a son. That's what he's talking. That's the law that he's talking about writing in their hearts. We covered that back in Sonship orientation. In a biblical theology, before you ever got to Romans 8, all of these verses we're looking at now, you would have already seen them all. and you would already know something about it. And you would know that in the new covenant, God is going to be writing something on your heart. Now, that is spiritual in nature. Remember, we talked about the new covenant was not about the land or the kingdom or any of that. It was all spiritual in nature. Look, this is what Paul is talking about. If you say, well, what does that really have to do with us? Look, 2 Corinthians 3:3. For as much as ye are manifestly declared to be the epistle of Christ ministered by us, written not with ink, but with the Spirit of the living God, not in tables of stone, but in the fleshy tables of the heart. That's what Paul said. That's what's supposed to be happening with you. We're not talking about writing this, etching it in stone or writing it with ink on a page. We're talking about writing this really in your heart. This is heart writing. And again, that's one of those issues that we talked about. Now, let me ask you this question. It's the Spirit, capital S, that does that heart writing. Here's my question. Is He the only one that does any writing on your heart? Karen says no. Anybody have a different answer? They're all afraid. You're the only one.
They call me a troublemaker for a reason.
Okay, troublemaker for a reason. I want to repeat that for the disc.
I know,
Doesn't Satan have access to your heart?
Huh?
Doesn't Satan have access to your heart?
Heart writing. I would say no. Not in the sense that we're talking about right here. Okay? If someone else has access, if someone else can have, that's a good thought. Can Satan write on your heart? But if God's not the only one, that can write on your heart, who's the other one? Karen said this one lowly. She just mouthed it. She said, yourself. But I saw it. And you know what? She's right. So you're batting 1,000 today. Look, take a look. Proverbs 3:1. My son, forget not my law. That's, again, not the law of Moses. But let thine heart keep my commandments. For length of days and long life and peace shall they add to thee. Let not mercy and truth forsake thee. Bound them about thy neck. Write them upon the table of thine heart. Who's he talking to here? Talking to the Son. The Son is supposed to do some heart writing as well. Now this is great. Just stick with me here. This really is good. I think I have one more reference on this. Yeah, 7:1. My son, keep my words and lay up my commandments with thee. Keep my commandments and live, and my laws, the apple of thine eye. Bind them upon thy fingers. Write them upon the table of thine heart. And again, not talking about the law of Moses. He's talking about the commandments of a father to a son. The sonship commandments. That's what he's talking about. Those are the things that are going to add life. These are the things that are going to bring you to where you're supposed to be. Now, I want to give you an illustration about this because I just want you to get it like this. God is going to do some writing on your heart, but you're going to do some writing on your heart. And think of it like this. Let's all go back to when we're in school. Now we're in the classroom. I'm going to be the teacher. And you know what? If I'm going to teach a class, before school ever begins, I have to put together a curriculum. Right? And you know what that means? I have written notes that I'm going to teach from. Right? I've constructed a curriculum and I've made notes that I'm going to teach from. And as I'm teaching, or at least I'm supposed to, teach from my notes. As you're sitting out there, do you know what you do? You scribble down notes. Now the camera's not going to be able to follow this, so just know this. I'm going to be off camera for a second. But if you've ever noticed a teacher, well, they may be writing on the board and they may be talking and people are taking notes, and every once in a while the teacher comes off of from the front of the class and just kind of while they're still talking about things, they look at what you're writing. Why? Okay. All right. I got all those answers are right. To make sure you're getting the lesson, what did you say?
Make sure you're teaching it right.
Make sure I'm teaching it right. Okay, I don't like that one. What else? She's not just trying to catch. She's not, yeah, I mean, to make sure you're paying attention, you're not just writing a note to Susie or whatever, but when you write your notes, let me get back on the camera, when you write your notes, is it going to match word for word with what the teacher's notes say? No. And does the teacher know that? Yes. But what is the teacher expecting? That's right. Even though you may be saying it a different way, she's looking at what, or he's looking at what is being written by the student to see if they truly are getting the right message from what the teacher's teaching. And if she sees somebody has written something that's moving off in a different direction, what does the teacher instantly know? Yeah, they've misunderstood. We got to go back and correct this. That's a perfect illustration of the searching of the heart. Now, I'm going to show you this in the Scripture, but just kind of keep that illustration in mind. And let me give you this next verse. And I want you to notice this is a small case S on spirit. Proverbs 20:27. The spirit, little s, the spirit of man is the candle of the Lord. I can remember years ago seeing this verse and thinking about this verse. I actually put it on the front of a series of studies that I did. But I remember looking at this verse and trying to think about this verse, and I had it totally wrong. I did not understand what this was. What is a candle for?
Light.
To give light. The spirit of man is the candle of the Lord, searching all the inward parts of the belly. You know what the Bible says your spirit is? It's a light that God uses to look inside and see what's there. Your spirit. Isn't that marvelous? I mean, God says, I'm going to use your very spirit. That's why when God does this, you can't con Him or fool Him. He's using your spirit to be the actual light to see what's in there. This is really great. But now, here's where I'm going with this. If your spirit is called a candle, and God has constructed your spirit to operate just that way, what is He going to do with that candle? He's going to do some searching, right? We've been talking about the searching of the heart. The inward parts of your belly, that's a reference to your inner man. That's all that is. He's not really talking about He's in your belly looking around. He's talking about, in your inner man. Now, Proverbs 23, verse 15. My son, if thine heart be wise. Now this is great. My heart shall rejoice, even mine. Yea, my reign shall rejoice when thy lips speak right things. How do you know? Oh, I don't know if I want to ask the question that way. I could. How do you know when what you've said is understood by the people you've said it to? The answer's right there. When their lips speak right things. In other words, when someone says, what do you understand about this? And they can tell you that. Do you know what you've just done? A searching of the heart. Even an earthly father can do this. That's why it's not by God's omniscience or omnipotence. He's doing what even an earthly father... I know you thought the searching of the heart for a son was God just kind of peering down inside of you. That's not how this gets done. This gets done by you saying to Him, here's what I understand about it. And when you say to Him, when He hears it, let's use the conversation we were having at the break. When Clinton said, I desperately need rain, but I know that that's a futile prayer. Resistance is futile. Your land will be assimilated. Okay. If you say that, if you say that, you say, I know that that's not it. If you say that to your Father, doesn't He now know you understand something? Because if you're just going, oh God, please, 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 please let it rain, please, please. I tell you what, God, if you'll let it rain, here's what I'll do. And you start to make a deal with God. I did that as a kid. And then my preacher said one time, God doesn't make deals. Oh, that killed me. I'd been making deals with God for years, you know. I actually thought we had a pretty good understanding. Evidently, I didn't know. But, you know, have you ever seen people that do, you know, they're like, oh, you know what? God, I heard a guy say this. I told God, he said, I'm going to win the lottery. I said, how do you know? He said, because I told God, if you'll let me win the lottery, I'm giving him half. What do you think God's going to do with that? Oh, thank goodness, because, you know, I was getting kind of low, and whew, it's a deal. Yeah, it's win-win. Are you kidding me? I know that's not what you and I were talking about, but you understand, if you hear that coming out of someone's mouth, you know they missed something. When you hear someone say, I know this isn't what I can be doing, I'm not really sure what I can be saying right here. That's exactly what Romans 8:26 just told you, the condition you ought to be in. You know not what you should pray for as you ought. And if you're there, if you're going, I don't have all this figured out yet, you're right where you're supposed to be. The problem would be if you're going, oh, I know exactly what to pray for. What? I'm just going to pray for it to rain. See, that would be looking at the notes and the notes not matching up with what the teacher's teaching. So, here's the point I'm trying to get here. The searching of the heart takes place in sonship prayer. When you say to the Father, here's what I understand. And He knows what to listen for. And He's thinking, this is what I need to hear coming out of this person's mouth. And in Romans 8:26, is He expecting to hear you say, I got this all figured out, I know exactly what to ask for? No, that's not what He's expecting you to hear from you. But He's also not expecting to hear from you the old stuff either. He's not expecting to hear that either. What He's expecting to hear is exactly what Clinton said at the break. Now, you know what's crazy is if you go into most churches, they would never say those words. Because we have to pretend to be more spiritual than we are. We can never admit we haven't arrived. I mean, how many times have I said to you that I'm not a fully educated son? I mean, I make no bones about it. But the point is this, there's some places you would go, people always are putting on this air. And while I'm here, let me just take care of this issue once and for all. I want to do this for the right reason. I want to do this the right way. I have to think about this just for a moment because I want to say this carefully. This is one situation where putting on airs will work against you. You either have this or you don't. You can talk about, I know all about sonship. You can talk about, I've got this down. You can talk about, I know this stuff already. But when adversity comes into your life and all you do is cry and complain and groan about your situation, you know what I know? What I'm hearing your lips speak don't match what you're pretending to be. I'm trying to be plain, but I'm not trying to just throw any individual under the bus. Are you with me here? This is a delicate line I'm walking. You can't, no, this is not about Jonathan's toe. I'm not doing it. But that's hilarious. If the folks on tape just knew what went on here during the break, I mean, oh my goodness. But really, if a situation arises, I'm teaching sonship. If you come to my house and all you hear me do is complain and moan about the things that aren't working out right, you would be wondering after a while, where does this guy's sonship come into play? I thought this was supposed to be equipping us, and he's complaining. I thought we were supposed to have patient endurance. He may be enduring, but he's not very patient. He's groaning like the creature, not groaning like a son. So, huh? Yeah, well, he can cry, right? He can cry, but not groaning. But this, you see, but the lips betray it. What comes out, and by the way, since I'm on it, let me just pull it up here. Look at what Jesus talked about this himself. O generation of vipers, how can ye, being evil, speak good things? For out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaketh. Jesus says, what you say betrays what you really are. And then look at this now. I'll give you one more. Luke 6:45. A good man out of the good treasure of his heart bringeth forth that which is good. An evil man out of the evil treasure of his heart bringeth forth that was evil. For of the abundance of the heart his mouth speaketh. And if heart writing has taken place in you and you have patient endurance, that's what's going to come out of your mouth. If it hasn't, then something else will come. You see that? And so whenever I need to back up now and go back to this, because when he says, if your heart be wise, he said, I'll rejoice, and the reason I'll rejoice is because I hear your lips speak right things. So when we say, oh God, why me? When I hear that, I am not going to go up to somebody and say, hey, that's pretty poor sonship. I'm not going to do that. I'm not their tutor and governor. But here's what I know. They're missing something. They're missing something. Because they've spoken out of the abundance of their heart. And that searching of the heart in sonship is not God beaming down into your soul to see the inner recesses of your thoughts and intents and desire. That's not it. It's Him talking to you and you talking to Him, and He's going to listen to what you're saying. And remember the answers you gave me earlier? I said, why would the teacher go around and look at all that? And you said, so that the teacher can see if everybody's really understanding the things that are being said. That's what your Father's waiting for. He's not waiting for you to talk like a fully educated son. He knows you're not there. He knows where you are. You're in sonship establishment. So He's wanting to hear those things that you do know. He's wanting to hear that. But the only way He's going to know it is how? You're going to have to tell Him. Because He's not going to just read your mind or know before you ever say it. You're going to have to talk to Him. Now, we're not through with this. What do I got? Boy, I sure hope this thing doesn't go over 2 hours. Okay. I gave you those. Let me get past these. Psalm 139. This is really the kingpin of the places that we're going to be spending some time looking at the searching of the heart. When we come back after the break, this is going to be a crucial, crucial Sunday. Because we're going to take this thing in Psalm 139, we're going to look at the details of it. Because I want you to fully understand this thing before we get out of it. Oh, that'll be good. You'll be working next week, and then you'll be off. That'll be perfect. See, we just did this for Clinton. It was because, we just love him. That's why we did it. To the chief musician, a psalm of David, O Lord, Thou hast searched me and known me. Thou knowest my downsitting and my uprising. Thou understandest my thought afar off. Thou compassest my path and my lying down, and art acquainted with all my ways. For there is not a word in my tongue, but lo, O Lord, thou knowest it altogether. Thou hast beset me behind and before, and laid thy hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me. It is high. I cannot attain unto it. Well, let's go back to the first part. Most people look at Psalm 139 and they think this is a psalm about God's omniscience, that God just automatically knows some things. And they would say it like this. Look, verse 2. Thou knowest my down sitting and mine uprising. Thou understandest my thought afar off. Thou compassest my path and my lying down, and art acquainted with all my ways. They say, see, God just knows everything because He's omniscient. But really, in the verse that's next, which we just read, David tells you how God knows all those things. Did anybody catch it when we read it? I know we went through it fast. I was thinking you might remember it from orientation. No? All right. Look at the next verse. For there is not a word in my tongue, but lo, O Lord, thou knowest it altogether. Do you know why God knew about all those things about David? Because He said it. In fact, you're going to find out David wouldn't shut up. He talked about everything. Did you see, by the way, let me see if you can do this. Just don't look at the notes about this, but just look at the verses. When you see from verse 2, he says, my down sitting and uprising. What does that mean, my down sitting?
Get up when I go to bed.
Well, okay, kind of, but, huh? All right, and then look at verse, Randy, I think you're looking at verse 3. Thou compassest my path and my lying down. So, wait a minute, David says, you know when I go to bed, you know when I get up, you know when I sit down, and you know when I stand up. How would God know when David sits down? Are you kidding me? Remember I told you David wouldn't shut up. Now it's not quite like this, but it's almost like I'm sitting down now, Father. I just want you to know I'm sitting down now, and now I'm getting up. And now I'm getting me a glass of tea. You say, is it really that bad? Almost. Almost. But David's not just doing that. It's really more than that. It's not just, I'm just going to tell you every time, I'm taking a deep breath now. I'm holding it. I just blew it out. That's not what he's not doing that. What is that really what is that really all about? Put all that together. What is David really doing? Just look at that. What comes to your mind? What is he doing? Yeah, he's talking about the things that have gone on all during the day. From the time he got up to the time he goes to bed. Isn't that really what he's doing? Do you remember back in orientation when I said you're going to learn to talk to your Father about going over all your day, but you're not just listing the stuff that you did. It's not just, well, Lord, I got gas today, and boy, let me tell you what the price of gases are like. I know y'all didn't have gas back when Jesus was here, so let me tell you about that. It's refined petroleum, and yeah, that's not what he's doing. It's ridiculous. Here's what he's doing. He's talking about all the things that have happened in his day as to how he understands it in light of his sonship life. Remember what we talked about at the break? It's not whether or not I'm going to have a good crop or a bad crop. It's how am I responding to all the things that are happening so that my sonship life is impacted. That's what he's doing here as a son. He's talking about everything from the beginning of the day to the end of the day. So if you're going to follow this pattern, a good thing to do, I mean, you could, I'm not saying you have to do it then, but at the end of the day is to just start going over your day with your Father. And just think of it as a real father. You come in at the end of a work day and he hasn't known what you've done, and you can say, let me tell you what happened today. Since I'm picking on Clinton today, we'll just make it National Pick on Clinton Day. One of his machines breaks down. And if he says to his father, you know, the machine broke down, and normally, here's how I would have responded to that. But I remembered that this was a training for me to get a skill that I'm going to need when I get into the creature. And I remember that I'm going to have patient endurance. And so now I went through this today, and here's what I was thinking. And you know what? The Father knows what He's listening for here. And so when Clinton says, so here's what I was thinking. Why, God? Why me? Why? Now when he says that, God knows what's coming out of your lips is telling me that you flunked. It's telling me you're not getting what I want you to get. But let's suppose this is what Clinton musters. He says, you know what? I didn't complain about it. In fact, I didn't even mention it to anybody. I fixed what I fixed, and even though I didn't get as far as I wanted to get today, I went as long as I could go because I know that my proper response to this suffering is equipping me for my job in the creature. And honestly, Father, I don't know exactly how I'm going to use this up there, but if you tell me that you're using this for my good, I believe it. Is that a legitimate prayer for him?
Yes.
What do you think the Father thinks when he hears that prayer?
Yes.
Oh yeah, he's going, yes, that's good. But one day, Clinton's education will be, when that equipment breaks down, he's not going to think about, okay, I'm supposed to be patient, so I'm not going to gripe. He doesn't have to think about that. He's going to respond to this thing exactly the way he is, knowing what it's doing in his inner man. And at the end of the day, he's going to say to his Father, I know this is going to be hard, but he's going to say, I know you didn't prescribe this, but I'm really grateful for the opportunity to hone this skill, because here's what I know you're doing. And then he's just going to talk about it. And the Father's going to hear the words of a mature son, and he's going to go, that's my boy right there. That's one I'm going to put in charge. I'm going to sit him on that throne, and I can turn that business over to him, and I'm not going to have to look over his shoulder and mother hen him. He's going to do it. I mean, doesn't that make any parent proud to know when they see their kid perform well? In fact, when we see them especially doing things we couldn't do when we were their age, or probably still can't do. That's what your Father is looking for. And one day, you won't need the Spirit to make intercession according to the will of the Father, because you will know exactly what to say about that. But in the meantime, you're going to be, now, the searching of the heart, we're not nearly through with this. What have I got left? Oh, good, a whole minute. What the Father is looking for here in bi-directional prayer is for you to start talking to Him about your day, and just do it the best way that you know how right now. He knows, He does know you're not a fully educated son. He does know that. You won't have to tell Him. He knows. But knowing where you are, He doesn't expect any more than that. Now, not everybody gets this at the same time. You do understand? Some folks hear it in here and they go, it just clicks. For others of us, we got to mull over this thing a little bit and look at it and scratch it out, and then all of a sudden the light comes on. But that's okay. That's okay. But what He's really looking for here is for you to be talking to Him. That's the important point. Right? Don't worry about getting it all right. Because this is a little bit of a duck out of water. Right? Because talking to God this way is way different from the way you used to talk to Him. Before it was the laundry list. Dear God, I need patience right now. Right? And we just went through. And you know what? And guess what? My bank account's at 0. And here's what else I need. And here's what else I need. And, and ask it all in Jesus' name. And we do all that kind of business. Now, instead, you're going to be talking to Him about how the things that are happening in your life every day are opportunities. And you may even go through the day, and at the end of the day, you may say, Father, you know what? I think this was an opportunity for my sonship, and when it was going on, I really didn't even recognize it for that. But I think I missed it. Is He okay with that? Sure He is. Because you're thinking, now what you don't know to do yet is how to know what He's doing when you ask Him to search your heart. Because when you get through talking, I'll just give you this little preview. When you get through talking to Him, and you're going to ask Him to do this pretty regular for a while, you're going to say, now, well, I almost jumped ahead of myself. When you get ready to talk about that day, and you do that, then you're going to say, there's something I was going to show you. It's in your notes, and we're out of time. But it talks, at the end of this psalm, it changes. David is no longer talking about what's going on in his day. He's talking about something he's thinking about doing tomorrow. And look where it goes. Search me, O God, and know my heart. Try me and know my thoughts, and see if there be any wicked way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting. And actually, before that verse, here's what he says. I know your enemies, and I know that they hate you. And he said, and I hate them with a perfect hatred, and I'm thinking about putting them to death. That's what he says. And then he goes, I just want to know if I'm thinking about this the right way. Because I'm thinking about hurting them really bad. And then he wants to hear from his Father, am I thinking about this the right way or not? And that's what he's asking here. Search me and know my heart, and see if there be any wicked way in me. He's talking about in reference to, Father, from what I understand, here's what I'm thinking about doing tomorrow, based on what I know so far. And then he wants to get a word back from the Father that says, you're thinking about this right, or stop, you're not. In this case, he was. Now, don't use that as a license now to go out and say, okay, yeah, if I can just get them to say something against God, I've got permission now to blow them away. And that's not how that works. But, again, this assembly, I have to make certain provisions here you don't in the rest of the country. But the important part is that you've got to understand, without this communication with your Father, your sonship life is, your education is not going anywhere. And you've got to start doing this. You've got to, and when it sounds real unfamiliar to you to start doing it this way, understand this. It's just like anything else. The more you do it, the easier it gets, and the more comfortable you get with it, and the more natural it begins to feel. Are you with me there? Now, I haven't told you how am I listening for God to give me, what am I looking for to see if I'm thinking about this right? That's what we'll be talking about when we come back next time. But I needed to introduce you to this thing on the searching of the heart so you understand how that works, because the way He knows is by what's coming out of your mouth. And you're going to have to talk to Him about this. Is that okay? No, there's a lot more questions, a lot more for us to look at, but this is a good start to get us going. Okay? All right, let's have prayer and we'll be done.